Hello, I'm Gigi the Reader, and today I will be reviewing Dorothy Must Die by Danielle Paige. The story starts with a teenage girl by the name of Amy Gum. Amy, who is 16 and lives in the flat hills of Kansas. She lives in the poor part of town with her mother at Dusty Acres Trailer Park. She's not popular in school and her parents are divorced. Her mother has a problem with prescription pill addiction after her father left and has remarried and started a new family, and her father doesn't stay in contact with her after he divorces her mother. Amy feels that she's basically taken care of her mother since the age of 12. Because her mother went into a deep depression after her divorce and mostly sleeps on the couch in the trailer home they stay in. She stays high and pops pills. One day, her mother runs off to a party with her friends and go to a local bingo hall, leaving Dorothy alone right before a tornado hits the town. Needless to say, the trailer is picked up in a storm. Finds herself alone in, a, in an upside down trailer home that has landed in Oz. She's alone except for her mother's pet rat, Star. So I'm guessing Star is the total of this version of Wizard of Oz. It's odd but cool. The first person she meets in Oz is a guy named Pete who rescues her and pulls her out of the trailer just before it falls off over a cliff. Pete has a brief conversation with her but hurriedly walks off, leaving Amy confused and lost. Amy walks on and reaches a small town. The town looks abandoned. She meets a small person meaning a munchkin, by the name of Ndingo. She tries to get some answers out of Ndingo as to where she is and what's happened to the town, but Ndingo is very evasive with her and tells her she's in danger if she stays in Oz. Amy asks for her help in getting home, and Ndingo finally agrees to take her, or at least show her the way to the Emerald City, where she might find a witch there that can work magic to get her home. On the way there, they run into a flying monkey named Ollie. Ollie is hanging up by his feet, and his wings have been clipped off. He explains it was his punishment for refusing to work for Dorothy. Dorothy has turned evil and has enslaved all the flying monkeys. And this is what she does to monkeys who speak up or talk back. So Ollie decides he'll travel with Ndingo and Amy to see if there is someone who can help him take refuge from Dorothy's wrath. He explains to Amy that he clipped his own wings off in defiance because Dorothy only enslaves winged monkeys to use them to work as guards to watch over her palace. On their way to the Emerald City, Amy finds out that Glinda the Good Witch has also turned wicked and now works for Dorothy. So Ndingo, Amy, and Ollie make it to the Emerald City. They are accosted by the Tin Woodsman and two of his assistants. The Tin Woodsman works for Dorothy, and he is also evil. In his questioning right away, he orders his assistant to kill Ndingo. As seeing Ndingo killed right before their eyes, Ollie runs off and escapes, but Amy is captured and taken to Dorothy's palace, where she is questioned further and thrown into jail. She stays there for days alone in a cell with her only company being Star, her pet rat. She's told she'll have to wait a trial that most likely will she'll be put to death. After so long in the jail, Pete shows up by entering the cell with a key. He tells her he gained access because he works as a gardener on the palace grounds. He tells Amy he had to sneak in. He tells her he can't rescue her, but he might be able to find someone who can. Less than a day later, a witch named Mombi shows up in Dorothy's cell and tells her she's there to rescue her. The Tin Woodman shows up with his assistants, but Amy and Mombi manage to fight them off, and Amy escapes. Mombi takes Amy off to some elaborate caves in the mountains. There is where a small organization of witches called the Revolutionary Order of the Wicked. They consist of Mombi, who's supposed to be the most powerful witch, Glamora, Glinda's twin sister Gert, an elderly witch, and Knox, a young boy her age. They live in the headquarters in a cave hidden in the mountains. The caves are an elaborate maze of beautiful rooms that look like a high-end condominium. At some point, they tell Amy that she'll become part of their plan to kill Dorothy. They say Dorothy must die. They tell her she has to be the one to kill Dorothy, mainly because is from the same place Dorothy is from, Kansas. There, Amy joins the order and is given her own beautiful room. Glamora and Gert teach her how to use the magic in Oz. They show her how to manipulate the magic and cast spells. Knox teaches her how to fight and use a knife. He also teaches her how to use the magic to help her in a fight. While being taught, they get Amy caught up on how Dorothy turned evil and how she's destroying Oz. It started when a wizard left Oz and gave the throne to the Scarecrow when he left. The rightful heir to the throne was Ozma. She was the fairy of fairy blood who was from Oz's true ancestry, but she was a baby when the wizard left, and that was why he gave the throne to Scarecrow. Mombi raised Ozma. When she came of age and old enough to rule over Oz, the Scarecrow handed the throne over to Ozma. When Dorothy returned to Oz, she came to live in the palace. When she became of age and old enough to rule over Oz, the Scarecrow handed the throne over to Ozma. When Dorothy returned to Oz, she came to live in the palace in the Emerald City. Her and Ozma became close friends, and Ozma made her a princess too. But bit by bit, Dorothy took power over her and took Oz away. She also put a spell on Ozma that left her slow and mentally impaired. Dorothy found out there was magic all over Oz, and in order to obtain the magic, she had to drill deep holes in mines. She minded the different cities all through Oz, even going so far as making the citizens and some children slaves by forcing them to work for her mining magic. She had drained most of Oz, hoarding it all up in Emerald City, while the rest of Oz, like Munchkin Land, lay destitute. During Amy's training, at some point, there was an attack on the people in the town of Pumperdink. Pumperdink is being attacked by the lion, a gang of his monstrous creatures. The order goes to help. While Knox and Amy are fighting some of the creatures, the lion shows up and starts to get the better of them. Gert shows up just in time to save Knox and Amy, but she is killed when one of her spells reverses on her. But Knox and Amy manage to survive. After that, Mombi and Glamora come up with a new plan to infiltrate the palace and kill Dorothy. They have Amy disguise herself as one of Dorothy's live-in maids who work close to Dorothy. They somehow kidnap a maid named Astrid from the palace. They then cast a spell on Amy, making her look exactly like Astrid. Then they magically send her to Astrid's room in the palace. Amy is told that there will be another person who's with the order who'll be working undercover there at the palace, but they can't tell her who it is. She'll find out later. There, Amy, as she disguises Astrid, works with the head maid, Jalea Jam. One day, while given the assignment to brush Dorothy's hair, she misses her chance to kill Dorothy. But after that, she finds out the Wizard of Oz is returning for a visit. She finds out Dorothy tolerates the wizard but doesn't like him. She finds out the wizard wasn't a real wizard when he first came to Oz, but is told by Jalea that he started to study magic years ago and now he is a real wizard. Later one day, while Amy's on her way to her room at the end of the day, she spots someone dressed in a maid's uniform trying to break into the Scarecrow's room. She's curious and sneaks up behind the person and finds out it's Ollie. She's shocked to see him because she hadn't seen Ollie since the day she was taken into custody by the Tin Men and thrown into Dorothy's jail. Ollie apologized for running off and abandoning her. Ollie apologized for running off and abandoning her but he didn't know what else to do at the time. He said he found refuge with an order of wingless monkeys, all who also defected from Dorothy's palace of enslaved monkeys. He said he disguised himself and sneaked into the palace to find and rescue his sister Maud. He said that the scarecrow had locked her in his lab and was experimenting on her. The scarecrow was as a mad scientist now who was just as evil as Dorothy. The reason he was experimenting on Maud was because she was an unusually smart monkey, almost a genius. So he was trying to find a way to extract the smartness out of her brain and inject it into his own. Ali was sure he was being tortured. She was being tortured during the experiments. Amy felt for Ali, but she said what he was doing was too dangerous and he could be killed if he was caught. She convinced him to let her find Maud. He agreed, he'd give her 24 hours, so she agreed to meet him in the courtyard with Maud in 24 hours. In the process of getting the scarecrow into the scarecrow's room, she had to steal the keys. The only person who had the keys to his room was Jalea, so she stole the keys from Jalea to get inside the room. She knew Maud wasn't in this room, but she knew she could get to the lab through the scarecrow's room. But she needed a distraction, so the guards wouldn't see her sneak into the lab. So she set the scarecrow's room on fire. While everyone was distracted pulling the fire out, she rescued Maud. Met Ali, where she said she would. Maud wasn't well at the time, but Ali thanked Amy and carried his sister off to the order of wingless monkeys he'd taken refuge with. He offered Amy to come with him, but she declined, saying her mission wasn't done at the palace yet. The next morning, she managed to slip the keys to the scarecrow's room back into Jalea's jam's pocket before she knew they were missing, but she felt Jalea suspected that she took the keys. Later, Amy finds out the wizard is actually visiting because Dorothy is throwing a big party, a ball. She invited the wizard and a lot of people throughout Oz. Dorothy and the rest of the servants were there serving the food and drinks at the ball. During the ball, Dorothy made a grand entrance. After her entrance, she made an announcement that there was a betrayer in their midst, that someone had broken into the scarecrow's lab and freed a lab monkey. She points to Jalea because she's said it could only be a person who had keys to the lab. Just then, the guards bring Jalea into the center of the ballroom with her hands bound. Then Dorothy announces that she was going to make an example out of Jalea. Amy starts to step forward because she wants to help Jalea and confess that she was the one who broke into the lab. But just then another servant grabs her arm. The servant is not. He's there too. He's in disguise, telling Amy to stay quiet, and it's not part of the plan. Suddenly, Jalea magically burns her ropes off and challenges Dorothy. Now, Amy realizes that it was Jalea is the one person in the palace that was also working undercover that Knox and Mommy didn't tell her about. Amy wanted to step forward and help, help Jalea, but didn't know if she should because she didn't know what plans Mommy and Glamora had set in place for her. So she found out that Jalea had powerful magic skills as she raised her hand, pointed to Dorothy, and announced to everyone in the room, "My fellow Ozians, it's time like these that the wicked will rise." And suddenly sent out a bolt of magic lightning towards Dorothy. Dorothy blocks it and tries to throw her own magic bolt at her, but her magic just fizzles out. She knows she can't win against Jalea. The lion is there, and she commands the lion to attack her. It's gruesome after that. The lion leaps forward and rips Jalea's arm off. After that, Jalea is carried away to the scarecrow's lab. After that gruesome scene in front of everyone at the ball, Dorothy demands the party continue. Everyone is terrified, so they continue to dance when Dorothy tells them to turn the music up. Later, we find out the scarecrow has killed Jalea. We know this because her dead body is paraded around the room. Dorothy does something grotesque with her body. She puts a spell on the body to make it move around and walk awkwardly around the dance floor. People can only look on in shock. It's at this point the reader realizes as to why Dorothy must die. Which really must die. No joke after this. So after this sick display, there's a loud explosion. Finally, Amy finds out the order she's been working. Finally, Amy finds out the order has been working for all these weeks at the palace had moved on the palace. They've laid bombs and broken through the guards and all the magical alarms and force fields that Dorothy has around the palace. Suddenly, all fighting breaks out as Amy tries to make her way towards Dorothy. When Dorothy realizes what is happening, she makes a run for it. Amy runs after her. The 10 men goes after Amy, but Knox jumps in and fights with the 10 woodsmen. Amy and Knox end up chasing Dorothy and the 10 men to the roof. While Knox is fighting with the 10 men, Amy is fighting with Dorothy. They get into a tussle. Amy lunges at Dorothy and they both go over the edge of the roof, and they end up gripping each other as they free fall through the air. Dorothy uses magic by reciting a teleporting spell that makes her disappear before she hits the ground. She's teleported herself and has escaped, but Amy doesn't know magic well enough to stop herself from falling. But suddenly she feels herself being lifted back up in the air, and is surprised when she looks up and sees this Ollie. Ollie has wings now. He tells her they aren't wings, but they are paper and wires that Wizard has concocted, and then enchanted the artificial wings to make him fly. He slowly descends and places her safely on the ground below. On the ground, she sees the wizard waiting. We find out the wizard is a good guy who is secretly helping the order. Standing there along with the wizard is Ollie's sister Maud, who also has a pair of enchanted artificial wings, and is also with Ozma. And Amy hadn't seen Ozma in a while. She had only seen her once in the palace. The wizard was there to rescue Ozma, and we find out that Pete was actually Ozma in disguise. The wizard disclosed to Amy and Ollie that he had disguised her to protect her. Amy tells the wizard how upset she was after a second attempt failed to kill Dorothy. Suddenly, while they're standing there talking, the 10 woodmen appears out of thin air. It looks as though Dorothy has teleported him there to finish Amy off. But Amy wins the fight, and while he's begging for his life, Amy finishes him off. The wizard tells her she must take his heart, so she cuts his mechanical heart out. The wizard tells her to keep the heart with her. As they are talking, she realizes the palace is on fire. All of the Emerald City is on fire and it's burning. The order's attack is successful, but Dorothy has escaped. The wizard tells Amy not to worry, that she has to escape for now with Ozma and keep her safe. He has arranged for Ollie and Ma to fly her and Ozma off to the refuge of the wingless monkeys. So Ollie carries Amy, while Ma carries Ozma. They lift into the air and fly off into the night. Amy feels sad because she can only think of how Dorothy escaped her. She looks down and realizes not just the palace is burning, but all of Emerald City is burning. It's a good thing because now all the magic that Dorothy was hoarding for the Emerald City has been released and dispersed back into the entire land of Oz. But Amy makes a vow to find Dorothy and finish her, because Dorothy must die. And thus was the last sentence in this book. Out of 4 out of 5 stars, I'll give it 5 stars. I really enjoyed this book. And my next review will be The Wicked Will Rise. Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe.